All right, let's grab our Bibles. Let's hold them up together. Let's say our creed together and our prayer together before we dive in this morning. Here we go. The Bible is the Word of God. The truth of the Bible will change my life. Lord, open my heart and awaken my mind and give me grace to respond. Change me for your glory and my joy. Amen. Thank you so much. And please turn to Luke chapter 5. If you're using one of those Bibles from the seat in front of you, it's somewhere around page 819. Luke chapter 5. Like our last couple weeks in this series, it's going to be a minute before we get to the text because we are going to diagnose. We're going to exegete the problem before we exegete the text. We're going to diagnose the problem before we diagnose the text. And to set the stage each week, we've kind of been getting our minds centered around what our focus has been. We've been talking about our relationships with our mobile devices. And I said last week that I feel like this series has made me sound like an old man, like a dinosaur who's out of touch with technology and whatever. I'm going to open up again in a way that you younger people are going to think I'm 1,000 years old when I say this. My first exposure to a cellular device looked like this. It was about the size of a TSA checked luggage bag, a carry-on bag, right? And please don't raise your hand if you had one of these because I need to give you some context. I was very young when I first saw one of these, and I have to confess that my first thought when I saw a person with one of these was very judgy. Now, this is a shame-free zone here today, but back then it was just not. I was young enough that I had no idea what the term narcissist meant, but I was forming that definition in my young mind when I saw a dude who was driving down the road in a convertible old Mercedes, and he had the big bag, and he was on the phone. And I distinctly remember as a kid thinking, how important do you have to think you are to need a phone with you in your car? I had that judgmental thought as a little child. But then I got a little bit older and I saw this version of the phone. And because I thought he was the coolest guy in the world, I suddenly was like, never mind, I must have one of those immediately. If you don't know who that is, you're either really young or not. Really young. Okay. I asked someone this morning, do you know who that is? They're like, I have no idea. And I was like, yeah, we can't be friends anymore. Anyways, I saw from the bag phone to the brick phone. Oh my goodness, that's so cool. And then now we've fast forwarded to this reality. To all the young parents, we're not going to shame you on Father's Day. We're not going to beat you up. I will tell you, my children never looked at a device while we were at a restaurant because we didn't have one. But if we did, so there's no shame. There's no shame here. What's interesting now is this is what we all look like in a restaurant, so we're not going to dog on kids this morning. And the last thing we want to do now on our phones is talk. Like the last thing we want to do is actually talk to another person. This thing was supposed to make us so much more productive in life. Lance Witt wrote this. He said, virtually anything that can be productive can also be destructive. And if that's true in general, it is assuredly specifically true about the device that hopefully is in your pocket or your purse right now. As we've been examining, this is our fourth and final week in this series called Look Up. In the first week, the idea was look up for peace. If this device, and the science is just clear, like the data is overwhelming, it's causing us greater anxiety. But that's not just something that happens to us. We are not just victims of anxiety. We also have responsibility. Peace is not just a thing that happens to us. Peace is about where we are focused and where we are placing our faith. And when we set our minds on Him, the author of peace and the God of all peace, then He will keep us, guard us in perfect peace. So look up for peace. Week 2, we talked about look up for connection. This device that promised to connect us is actually dividing us. And now we look at each other with comparison and with criticism Or with the other extreme, covetousness. We want so bad the life that we think someone else has. And the cure in that is the cross. The cross has freed us from being insecure about each other, or from judging each other, or from coveting each other. Last week was the toughest of the talks, and that was look up and see the battle. Look up for clarity. The reality is this device is not just a passive, amoral thing. There's actually a battle that's going on for our hearts and our souls. This morning, we end this series with the idea of look up for rest. Every person I know that you get to have a real conversation with at some point in time will say, I'm so tired. And the reality is, you're not making that up. We are. Again, the data is in. And part of the relentlessness of the device that's probably not in our pockets or our purses, but our hands, is it is wearing us out. And it's affecting our ability to even be present, to know that we need to rest. There's 20 years worth of research that was done by a researcher at the University of California, Irvine, named Gloria Mark, that is still ongoing, but at the 20-year mark, she released some data, and this is what we discovered. In 2004, the average person spent about 2.5 minutes on a single screen before switching to something else. By 2023, that number had collapsed to just 47 seconds. From 2.5 minutes to 47 seconds in 20 years, and I can't wait to see what the new data is because it's going to be a lot less. As a matter of fact, the devices or the streaming platforms that are making the most money have monetized the shorter videos. So the most money that's produced on your device are TikToks or YouTube Shorts or Reels on Instagram or on Facebook. The money maker is the very thing that is shortening our capacity to focus and making us more restless. Part of Gloria Mark's research that was so interesting. So I last week I told you that it had been a while since we talked about these clarity statistics, and they'd kind of had all gotten a little worse than last time I had researched this. This week, some of the data we're going to look at before we jump to the text was enlightening to me. I never have read this research before, and I don't know how we're not talking about this more. And specifically, Gloria Mark's research reveals that after every interruption, this is almost unbelievable to me, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return to the same level of deep focus. And I would think that she made that up if it wasn't so specific, right? 23 minutes and 15 seconds. Clearly there's some scientific data behind this. I don't know. But that's fascinating if you remember back to 4 weeks ago when we said we all check our phones at least once every 4 minutes. What that means is we're living life not fully focused. Most of us never actually reach deep focus at all. We spend our entire day in a permanent state of interrupted thinking, never getting back to where we were before the last ping arrived. And that distraction's not just it's before we return to the task, it's before we return to the same state of focus. It's fascinating. Here's another one that was brand new to me. A Florida State University study found that simply receiving a notification, even if we don't look at it, even if it's just a vibration in our pocket, causes enough cognitive distraction to measurably impair our performance on whatever we're doing. So the way sermon prep works in my mind, I'm not a guy who can just preach in a week. I'm a slow cooker. The way I can't write a sermon in a week. And so when I first started writing this sermon, it was several months ago, and usually that ends up really jarbled in a Word document that makes no sense. And then usually about a month out, I'm starting to organize it to where it makes sense. And then the week of, I'm finally like, okay, this is a 3-hour sermon, so I got to cut all this out, whatever. And so 2.5, I think, weeks ago, I was re-looking at this week's sermon, and I saw this particular stat, and I had forgotten about it. Probably because I got a notification and got distracted. I was like, oh, that's right, I forgot that I read that. that can't be true. There's just no way that if you don't look at it, it's distracting. So for the last 2.5 weeks, my radar has been up to see if this is true. And I'm just here to tell you, it might not be true for you, but it's true for me. Now that I actually paid attention to my attention, I discovered that even when the phone is like on my desk or a side table, when I hear the bzz, because my phone is never out loud. Who does that? If your phone actually dings, like, come on, dude. But the bzz, actually, like I noticed, it actually pulls away my attention even when I think I'm not paying attention to it. And if you'll pay attention to your attention, you might find that your attention is not attentioned. The distraction that we ignore is comparable to actually stopping and paying attention when it comes to cognitive focus. So how does that affect how we do life? Well, the average worker loses 1 hour and 18 minutes every single day to digital distractions. That compounds to nearly 340 hours of lost productivity every year. And if you're a math person, you're like 340, 40-hour work week. That's over 8 weeks. That is more than 2 months of working time that we're going, oh, it's my aunt, whatever, like the thing. Oh, my aunts are great, by the way. That wasn't in my note. That's just, okay. It's just the distraction. That's fascinating. And it's not good for us. It does not produce rest in our spirits. Again, these cell phone things, they've been around long enough that we've got some data and we've got some research. As a matter of fact, your phone is constantly reading you. It's constantly reading how you're reading it. And so there's profound data, and here's some of the data. Excessive smartphone use has been associated with mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and stress. And so we are talking about how there's a problem in our culture of depression, anxiety, and stress. And we're talking about it on social media platforms. And that is called irony. And the amazing thing about depression and anxiety and stress is these conditions can in turn elevate the risk of substance abuse. Individuals may turn to alcohol or drugs as coping mechanisms. Literally, this is hurting us as a people group. And yet there's billions of dollars being spent today about how we can get you to do more of it. It is sinister. One of the most significant studies about this attention thing and how it's just keeping us locked in was just done last year by Oxford University. And here's 2 profound things from Oxford. This is amazing to me. Blocking mobile internet for 1 month improved their mental health more than antidepressants typically do in the same time frame. What we are trying to produce with medicine produced itself in the mental health of those who just blocked mobile internet access. Not they took away their phone. They could still text, they could still call. They just couldn't be on social media platforms or online. Fascinating. By the way, just to be super clear, I'm not saying throw your phone in the trash as you walk out and stop taking your anti-anxiety medicines. Please talk to your medical health provider. Here's the other profound thing that this study revealed at Oxford. Blocking mobile internet for 1 month improved sustained attention as much as if they were 10 years younger. Next time you walk into a room and can't remember why you walked into that room, remember this stat and turn off your mobile internet access. That's profound. 10 years. After 1 month, the ability to focus was as if they were 10 years younger. That's fascinating. So then here's the question. So then why aren't we all buying flip phones this afternoon? I'm sure there's a Father's Day sale somewhere. Well, why are we on them so much? If we know this and we believe this, and here's why. Because the machine is working to grab your attention. It's called the attention economy. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. Your attention is its own economic force. This was a new idea to me. This idea that our phones were designed, we were told, to make us more productive. And I was reading about some of the research that's come out of people who used to work in Silicon Valley and are now advocating for us to dumb down our phones. They were talking about the difference between a tool and what our phones have become. And I'm not, you guys have heard me say this a lot, I'm not a super handy guy. When I swing a hammer, I usually break what I'm trying to build, and it's just not good. But I know that the idea of a tool that you own is that it's available for when you need it. There's not a tool in your toolbox or in your garage or in your shed that is beckoning to you. There's not a tool in your garage that's seducing you or manipulating you. It doesn't want anything from you, but your phone does. It's worth millions of dollars. It's your attention. This idea came from a guy who was a leader at Google named Tristan Harris, that idea of the tool. He said this: we've moved away from having a tools-based technology environment to an addiction and manipulation-based tech environment. He went on to say this: social media isn't a tool that's just waiting to be used. It has its own goals and its own means of pursuing them by using your psychology against you. Fascinating. And as a result, we're restless. I know I sound like a dinosaur. But our phones are not neutral. It is not passive. It has an agenda. And that agenda is not for you to experience shalom. Your phone's agenda is not that you would flourish. How many of you have watched the Netflix special called The Social Dilemma? Raise your hand up nice and high so I can see you with my blindness. Oh, so much fewer than I expected. Okay, I wish I'd have stuck that on the take-home thing. So I encourage you to make a note right now. I think if you have a smartphone, it should be required watching. Like I think every cell provider should legally be required to be like, unless you pass the test, the quiz that shows us that you really watch this, we can't give you a phone. I encourage you. Now, here's the thing. It is written towards or produced for like upper elementary age. So it's a little bit juvenile. So it's not going to be like, oh, this is a Stephen King thriller. Like it's not going to make you think, right? But it's going to make you think. It's profound. And it's meant to be something that kids can easily understand about the purpose and intention. And it was produced by, and there's interviews of, the original designers of the phone and the social media platforms that many of us are on several hours a week. It's profound. This is a much longer commercial than I intended to say. The Social Dilemma is great to watch. And the most profound thing that you'll experience as you watch it is you will realize that you are not actually a customer. You are the product. You're not buying, you're being sold. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So think about this. These social media platforms that we spend hours on, this is a simple thought, but I need you to engage with this. What did it cost you to sign up for your favorite social media platform? $0. Yet they're worth billions. They're making tons of money, but they're free. Is anybody else confused by that? I don't recommend that as a business model. I don't know what you do for a living, but if the product that you produce you're giving away, that's called the path to bankruptcy. Wait, but they're growing in value. Some of you are like, yeah, thank God I own stock in them. Sweet. How are the free things making so much money? Because they're selling our attention. And so if you've noticed, sometimes when you're in a doom scroll and you're like, I don't even know these people. Because they're not people. They're fake people selling a product. They're not talking about their life. They're just trying to get your attention. And then you'd be like, why are all these ads for everything? Because you mentioned it to your cousin yesterday, and it was listening, and it thinks you want to buy it, right? We've all experienced this. It's listening. No, it's actually listening and thinking and reading you. That's just real. Is anybody freaked out? Anybody feel weird right now? Some of you are watching this on social media right now. We're not the customer, y'all. We're the product. Jaron Lanier, who's a computer scientist, not a theologian, said this: it's the gradual, slight, imperceptible change in our own behavior and perception that is the product. Some of us have formed opinions about issues or even products that we don't actually have an education in or any experience in. It's been slight and imperceptible, but we've been influenced by this device, and that's what they're selling. Our attention can be mined. We are more profitable to a corporation if we're spending time staring at a screen than if we're spending that time living our life in a rich way. So corporations are using those tools to get smarter. They're using artificial intelligence. This is just real. This isn't spooky. This isn't like conspiracy theory. They're honest about it. They are using AI to get smarter to steal our attention. Not to pull us towards what we want to see, but towards what they want us to look at. Not even things necessarily that align with our core values. Speaking of values, can I just stick a parenthesis in here for 2 seconds? Can I go off script for a second? Very often what happens in the church is on Mother's Day, we celebrate mothers and tell women how awesome they are. And then typically in the church on Father's Day, we tell dads to get their act together and step up for a change. And I don't just want to not do that today. I actually want to do the opposite because we're in an historic moment. Dads are leading the way. Young men are leading the way in returning to the local church. Last year, young men led the purchase of Bibles in the United States of America. Pew Research just put out some brand new data today. 86% of fathers said that being a dad is one of the most important aspects of their identity. And so I just want to celebrate, especially the young dads in our midst. Some of you are just stepping up and leading your families well. And I want to say we see you and we honor you and we're proud of you and we are convinced the best is yet to come. And maybe one of the ways that God wants you to rise up and lead in your home is to make everybody mad at you by establishing some boundaries around digital devices. Comedian Edward Tufte said, there's only 2 industries that call their customers users: illegal drugs and software. Which is funny because before I got my iPhone, the phone I was using was a BlackBerry. Where's my old BlackBerry users at? Yep. And what did we call it? Crackberry. I lost my Crackberry. Where's my Crackberry? Did you call it a Crackberry? Your spouse probably did. Because we were addicted to it. We're like, this is fascinating. And I saw this quote this week and was like, wait a second. I literally called my first smartphone a Crackberry. The people who built these tools are now warning us against them, or at least encouraging us to think about our relationship with them. Just this week, I got to hurry up, but just this week, this past Wednesday, I think it was, in the UK, a law was passed to ban social media access for children under the age 16, starting next year. They are banning in the UK TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Facebook, and X, Twitter. I just won't call it X. It's Twitter. And then from ages 17 and 18, there's like a phased rollout of social media access. And for those of us who think freedom is the cause that it should be, you might not like that the government is regulating that. Now, Australia was one of the first to do that. UK is not the first to do this. And I don't know what I think about government mandates, but I do find it interesting that entire civilizations on the planet are like, I think this might be bad for us. It's just interesting. So what's the solution? At least part of the solution is that we would just look up to the person of Jesus again. What would his relationship be with a mobile phone if he was still in the flesh today? It's worth asking. I think he would have a smartphone because I think he would leverage influence. He was pretty good at doing that, right? But I don't think his screen time notification would look like mine. So when we look at the life of Jesus, can you imagine the pressure of Jesus' job, right? That this device makes us connected to the world and productive. Okay, slow your roll. Jesus. We catch up to the text, Luke chapter 5, in one of the villages. This is just a snapshot of a story that's told in 100 different ways throughout the Gospels. In one of the villages, Jesus met a man with an advanced case of leprosy. I know we don't know much about leprosy today, but I can just tell you it's bad news. It's a death sentence, and there's no cure. And this is an advanced case of that. So it's bad, 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 bad. Hopeless. When the man saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground, begging to be healed. Lord, he said, if you are willing, not if you're able, I love that, you can heal me and make me clean. Then Jesus did something that no one did when they encountered someone with leprosy. He reached out and touched him. Everyone ran, moved away from a leper, but Jesus moved towards. I am willing, he said, be healed. And instantly, the leprosy disappeared. The hopeless, uncurable death sentence met Jesus and was instantly disappeared. That's awesome. That's crazy. That's Jesus. And just so we're super clear, I don't think this is figurative language. I don't think this is a parable. I believe this actually happened. Jesus has this kind of power and authority. Praise his name. And then Jesus did the opposite of what anybody I know would do. Then Jesus instructed him not to tell anyone. Every person I know would be like, come here. Hey guys, I'm here with Leper Fred. Right? Jesus instructed him not to tell anyone what happened. He said, go tell the priest, let him examine you, take along the offering required in the law of Moses for those who have been healed from leprosy. There was a very specific thing in the law that required, if you wanted to be able to worship again, you had to prove that you were healed, and then you had to offer a sacrifice. This will be the public testimony that you've been cleansed. But despite Jesus' instructions, it still went viral. The report of his power spread even faster than the leprosy had. And vast crowds came to hear him preach and to be healed from their diseases. But Jesus often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. What a small verse that sends a big message, specifically for those of us living in this relentless, noisy culture. The pattern, the rhythm of Jesus was often withdraw from the noise. And what is profound in this moment is this was not a reaction from Jesus. This was not a response to burnout. This was not Jesus felt bad and needed a break. This was not if I can just get to vacation, maybe I can survive. This is the repeated rhythm of the Son of God in the flesh. He would often turn off the noise. He would often get off the roller coaster just to connect with the Father. Which implies that doing the best thing in the world can still be a distraction to our souls. Remember what it just said Jesus was doing. He's preaching and healing diseases, not doom scrolling. He's not online gambling. Like, he's doing the best stuff. And even he says, my soul wasn't made for a pace of relentlessness. I tend to only withdraw when it's too late. I'm burned out or I'm exhausted. I've shared before, I struggle with little seasons that we would call depression today. We know the human function well enough that it's got a name and a label and whatever, and sometimes I feel that, and I'm like, and it's not even circumstantial, it's just super random, and I'm like, oh, I need to address that or that's going to get worse. Jesus isn't responding to a thing. It's just a regular rhythm. Jesus regularly made himself unavailable to the noise so that he could be fully present to the Father. That's not selfishness, that's sustainability. And we've confused availability at all times with being loving. If I don't respond to that instantly, they're going to think I don't matter to them anymore, and their feelings are going to be hurt. So I have to respond to that text at midnight. We respond to emails on vacation because the company will collapse if we don't. Underneath all of that is this idea that I feel stuck on the roller coaster. So one example of this often withdrawal by Jesus, he would often withdraw. He would often withdraw. Well, one of the more interesting examples of this, if we can just kind of zoom in on not often but specific. So Bible scholars love Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1 is considered the most action-packed chapter in all of the gospel narrative. Healings and exorcisms and crowds gathering. So you know how you watch a movie and the opening scene, something blows up and you're like, whoa, that started quick, right? That's the Gospel of Mark. Like you turn to the Gospel of Mark, boom, explosion. And in verse 35 of Mark chapter 1, read this. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. I love it. Jesus isn't like, man, this is going terrible. I really need to go ask the Father for something. He also didn't say, I got to wait till things slow down, then I'll reconnect. He also didn't ask anybody's permission. He just unplugged. And can I just say this? He also didn't post about it. Practicing digital Sabbath. Oh, they liked it. I wonder if they do digital Sabbath. Right? Hey guys, going to be off the grid for a minute. He just went off the grid. The crowd came looking for him and he didn't come back. And Jesus is the most loving person who's ever lived. Do we agree with that? The crowd said, we want your attention. He said, no. That's not unloving. Because he knew something. Output requires input. Bryce and I went out of town this past week and had a great time together. The first night we were at the place, I got up the next morning and woke him up because he's 15. And his noisemaker's on, his white noise, because he's smart. Those of you who sleep in silence, I don't know how you do that. So white noise is on. And I'm like, hey, buddy, get up. He gets up and he goes, so did you bring an extra charger? Because with my white noise on, I forgot my charger. I've got 3% battery left, right? Because I travel a lot and because I preach about device health, I was like, I actually have 4 chargers. We're here for 3 days. I travel a lot, so I have a bag in my bag. That's my excuse anyways. But yeah, I've got 4 of them. Because it can't do the thing if it doesn't recharge. That's the irony of the device that won't let us recharge. And I know this is obvious, this is so on the nose, but like, if the Son of God had to turn off the noise and get off the roller coaster, then in honor of the dude with the bag phone, how important do we think we are? That we think we don't need this? And there's a big difference between real rest and the kind of rest that your phone offers you. Psychologists call it facade rest. So like the brain rotting isn't actually rest. Now, let me be super clear. If you are in a thinking job, there is such a thing as, you know what? I need to not think. I need to read a book. I need to go fishing. I need to binge watch a show. Knock yourself out. That's great. But if the only way you ever rest involves Netflix saying, "Are you still there?" It's the most shaming thing in the world. I'll tell you when I'm not here. Next. I saw a comedian just this week, because my phone listens to me and knows what I'm going to talk about, who said, you know how they do the recap at the beginning of the next episode and you feel embarrassed because you're like, I know, I watched 8 in a row. I don't need the recap. Okay, yeah. That's facade rest. It's the difference between distraction and Sabbath rest. What Jesus was modeling for us is that we have an original design code built in all of us. Jesus was practicing a factory reset. Genesis chapter 2. So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the 7th day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all his work. God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work of creation. Question: was God wore out from all of that talking? No. Some of you introverts are like, he might have been. The talking is exhausting. No, he wasn't tired. And maybe you've known this for forever as a person who grew up in the church and has been in the church my whole life and has been in ministry for 30 years. I never connected the dots ever in my life until just a few years ago that the Sabbath was Adam and Eve's first day. Maybe you've always known that. I just probably didn't pay attention when I was first taught that. Like, they're created on day 6. It's awesome. This is great. What are we doing tomorrow? Nothing. Their first day. And that's the true model. Bearing the image of God, he taught us that we work from rest. We don't rest from work. Rest is not the reward for doing a good job. You're productive, you can take a day off. That's not the way we're created. We're created to Sabbath, to experience the warmth of our Creator's face, and then to move into the work that he's given to us. And that's exactly what Jesus was modeling. And there's an illustration for this that all of us can relate to. And I read about this illustration, and it didn't naturally come to mind because I told you I'm not a handy guy. But there's a thing, when you build something, there's a hardwired thing into our DNA that we finish it and we go, yep, right? Like there's that step back. For some of you, your version of step back is, look, everybody, right? Like you step back and go, well, like there's that moment. And so, you know, your phone is learning you, right? So the shorts that I watch, when my phone wants me to look at it, it gives me shorts of people building things that I don't have the ability to build super fast because I don't have the patience to actually watch them build it. So it's unrealistically moving fast and skipping tons of steps. And by the end of the short, there's the beautiful piece of handiwork. That's my attention span. Anybody? Or, scroll next. a terrible yard, and the dude shows up super fast, unrealistically fast. We got 15 seconds to make this beautiful, okay, or I'm scrolling away. Right? Any of you watch those? I love those videos. Or the person who hasn't had a haircut in 3 years, and then that is what my feed is full of. Do you know why? Because as a pastor, none of y'all are done being conformed to the image of Jesus, and these are actually done. That's a true story. Everything's smack dab in the middle, just like me. We're all smack dab in the middle of being conformed to the image of Jesus. So nothing's ever done. And I'm like, oh, it's done. And my phone's like, he watched that one. I watch cooking videos, and I don't know how to make a Pop-Tart. It's done. She served it in 3 seconds. There's something about it being finished that as image bearers, we're like, oh, that's what Sabbath is. Sabbath says, it's finished. I can rest. Which leads us to the single most important word that was ever spoken in the history of humanity. As Jesus hangs on the cross, one of the things he says when he speaks from the cross is, I'm thirsty. He's given some soured wine. And John chapter 19, verse 30 says, when Jesus had tasted it, he said, it is finished. And then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. It's the one word, tetelestai. It's a word so big we have to use 3 words to say it. It is finished. Because of the completed work of Jesus on the cross, we can Sabbath. We can take a day off. It's finished. I don't have to work for anything, prove anything, earn anything. And it's even better than that. Then Jesus got up from the grave and took his spirit back. So he's got this. I can miss out on something. I can not be in the loop about your life. If it's a big enough deal, call me. I can step away. I can breathe. I can verb Sabbath. Not just think of it as a noun, a thing. Not in a legalistic way, not under the weight of it, but as a gift from God to just breathe. The thing that is stealing our rest does not have authority over our souls. So the take-home suggestions for this week, our final week of the take-home series. When you leave today, you'll get a handout on the way out. And there's 4 suggestions on this. One is the weekly Sabbath anchor. The encouragement is pick a day each week for the rest of the summer and put it on the calendar. This is my digital Sabbath. Hopefully some of you practiced that for the first time last week. And again, that's not a legalistic thing. You can still get the texts from your children. Your mom can still call you if she needs you. Even if your version of a digital Sabbath is just not online. No social media, no emails for a day. A weekly Sabbath. Anchor it in your calendar. The next one is, if you've not yet done so, we gave you an example of one last week, but a family agreement, a family covenant of this is when our phones get put down. This is what we do or don't do at the table. The third encouragement is an analog hour. For the rest of this summer, pick 1 hour every day that your phone is just away from you and you're old-fashioned. You're just with people, taking a walk, something. And then the fourth suggestion is that you find a person who becomes a partner with you in this digital Sabbath. It's more likely that you'll have success in this if you've got somebody doing this with you. So who is a person who's practicing this rhythm of digital Sabbath with you in your life that you can say, hey, let's do this together for the rest of this summer? Last week was an interesting anniversary that I think was really fitting for this morning's tone. Last week was the 142-year anniversary of the first ever roller coaster in the U.S. The Switchback Railway opened at Coney Island. June 16th, 1884. This idea of getting off the roller coaster and finding rest. This roller coaster was not just the first roller coaster in America. It was legendary at the time because it went a breakneck speed of 6 miles an hour. And people flocked to Coney Island to feel the breeze in their face. And when I saw that calendared event, that anniversary this week, and specifically when I saw that picture and thought how anticlimactic it looked, I thought of our neighborhood. The OG Six Flags over Texas, is also having an anniversary this year. You might not know that. The 65th anniversary of Six Flags over Texas is this year. And to commemorate the anniversary, there's also a brand new roller coaster that's going to be open sometime this summer. Supposedly it is near completion, called the Tormenta Rampaging Run. And it looks a little different than that Coney Island one. Okay, y'all. So if you can't tell in the picture, that first thing is not a wall. That's the drop. Like, y'all. So 309 feet tall. It pauses at the top. And then it is a 95-degree drop. Merciful heavens. There's a lot of ways in which this roller coaster is making history. It is the first ever gigadive coaster in the world. A gigadive coaster is described as an over 300-foot drop that is near vertical. So 90 degrees. Congratulations, we're all going to die. And as opposed to the little doop done of Coney Island, this is 4,199 feet of track. There's a vertical loop that's 179 feet, which is another world record. But most specifically for this morning's, when I saw that picture of the 6 mile an hour Coney Island ride, the top speed of this coaster is 87 miles an hour. And what dawned on me is the people, which, by the way, when you're doom scrolling later today, you can actually look up that original switchback railway. There's actually some old shaky footage of people riding that coaster in suits and ties. And women are in fancy dresses with hats and little umbrellas going up and down on the thing. It's fantastic. And so when I saw that this week, I just thought they never could have imagined what's in store for those of us who live in the Metroplex. And in the same way, I just think the original designers of that device that promised us so much connection and productivity, and I just don't know that they had any idea that it was going to do this to us. The constant distraction. And our designer, our actual creator, invites us to something different. It's called Sabbath rest. We see it in the practice of Jesus. We see it baked into all of creation. And it's ours for the claiming.